Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Boykin, and I am here in beautiful Boulder Creek, California, where the flannel shirt is our state flag, the pit bull our state bird, and cannabis is our state flower. If you've watched the show at all before, you've heard me say that in terms of climate change, any information that is released in terms of climate change incomplete until it incorporates geoengineering. What do I mean by geoengineering? It's pretty simple. Any sort of weather modification that is done to specifically manipulate the outcome of an otherwise natural phenomenon. The Amazon is burning completely out of control. And a lot of that has to do with controlled burns to clear land so that big agriculture can come in, the beef industry can come in. There's several other exploitable resources that you can pull out of a largely forested area like the Amazon. And that's what most of that is about. When Jair Bolsonaro came into office in Brazil at the expense of a illegitimate candidate's arrest that was basically orchestrated out of Trump's White House and Department of Justice. When that happened, Bolsonaro opened up basically the entire Amazon to exploitation and to industry. There are now mercenary squads that are going in to wipe out native villages so that they can more easily move in and take over this area and fucking kill the trees, rape the land, and make a buck. Oh Jesus, that's my volume. At any rate, it's not just Brazil that's on fire right now. There's tens of thousands of acres burning away in Siberia, one of historically the colder places on the earth. Greenland, which apparently is on Donald Trump's "I need to buy this" list. Alaska, millions of acres are gone in Alaska. They just had to evacuate and then move people back into McKinley. All over southern Alaska, there are fires raging up and down. Anchorage has been really heavily hit. It's brutal. We're about to come into heavy wildfire season here in California. And we've seen some of the worst. I'm pretty sure it was the largest fire in California in Mendocino 2 years ago. And then the Bear Fire last year, which basically leveled the town of Paradise and a couple of areas around it. Very recently, a paper came out. The article that I'm getting this from, where did it go? As I'm waiting for this freaking machine to load up. Going back to what I've said about climate data and geoengineering, when I went up to like Mount Shasta area for a meetup for the Eyes Open network that this show is a part of, we're outside of the town of Anderson, California, wide open, kind of like, farmland sort of area. It just happens to be by one of the most beautiful fucking mountain volcanoes on the West Coast. We were watching the place get chemtrailed. there's and this is really at the crux of this study, the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail, which is ice crystals and water vapor that comes off of the back of a plane. We were watching these planes go by, streaming 4 to 6 giant tracks of heavy metal. Um, when you get into the study, and here, let me do. This is out of Memory Hole, which I'll link to in the notes. Two scientists have published their findings on the relationship between geoengineering and the intensity of California wildfires in the peer-reviewed research outlet Journal of Geography, Environment, and Earth Science. Quote, the near global jet spraying of particulate matter evidenced as mainly coal fly ash into the troposphere has major consequences on climate, authors J. Marvin Herndon write in the report. One consequence of aerosolized CFA, that's the coal fly ash, is to exacerbate global warming, which evidence indicates is mainly caused by pollution, especially particulate pollution, not by greenhouse gases. So that's a contention that they make that kind of goes against what we hear. I guess in the more mainstream outlets. How is that possible? I don't even know. So we've got this report is fascinating, by the way, and it's very well documented, and there are a ton of pictures to go with it. We saw, let me go back to my story here for a second, though, real quick. We saw thick, like charcoal dark chemtrails being laid out in almost a grid pattern up over towards the city of Reading. The pictures that they show, and I'll start posting them on my Twitter here shortly, of what the coal fly ash looks like under a microscope, really kind of sort of best describes the color that was pouring out of these planes. And then right behind it, another jet would come that would spray a lighter color behind it, and it would sort of blend in. These folks, the two authors of this study, particularly looked at the areas in Mendocino County where the fire was there, and also they studied like San Diego County in terms of how it was being chemtrailed. So they have this report broken down into several different sections as to what aluminum, barium, and coal fly ash do to the Earth's environment, to the flora and the fauna, including us. The part about the drought in particular, I've found to be fascinating. Actually, a couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and read this a little bit out of order. But this is in the heading California drought caused by aerial particulate spraying. Our planet rotates, and some of its rotational energy is transferred to the atmosphere. That's the primary mover of weather air masses, period. Additionally, weather masses move driven by differences in pressure from high pressure to low pressure regions. The near daily, year after year, aerial particulate spraying along the California coast and offshore in the eastern Pacific Ocean heats the atmosphere. The nearly continuously heated atmosphere results in nearly continuously elevated atmospheric pressures. That artificially created high pressure zone along California's coast acts like a wall to prevent the flow of Pacific Ocean moisture-laden weather masses from coming ashore. The consequence is a persistent artificial drought for California. As one author observed, sometimes after a weather forecast predicting rain in a few days, the spray jets intensify their spraying, thus often preventing the predicted rain. this is not bullshit. Uh, if you look, I've talked about this before, just casually with people who have lived here their entire lives, and I've lived, the Central Coast of California, going on 15 or so years now. Um, we don't have a fog belt anymore. Our fog belt has been pushed away, like very rarely, and only in the last 3 or 4 days out of the entire summer have we got much, if any, fog. Um, According to this study, it's because when the fog is rolling in, there's a concerted and intentional effort to keep it at bay and to keep California in an artificial drought. To what end? I would imagine that there are a number of ways that something like that could be capitalized upon. You don't really have to look much further than like Nestle or the Crystal Springs Water Company, all the companies that have made killer backroom deals with Governor Jerry Brown to pillage the groundwater. There's the Resnick, I think, family that owns the wonderful pistachio company that has completely sucked all of the water table dry south of Los Angeles, and is entirely willing to go to war with Iran over cornering the pistachio market. I'm not kidding about that. Um, Getting back to this report, though, um, and to go along with what I've been talking about, especially with the fog belt, um, the next section is called Causing Tree Death. Aluminum is one of the major elements of the Earth's crust, but is locked up tightly with other elements, especially oxygen. Consequently, neither plants nor animals develop the ability to live well in an environment with aluminum in a chemically mobile form, in which it is dissolved in water. One of the consequences of aerial spraying of CFA, that's coal fly ash, is that atmospheric moisture extracts the aluminum in a chemically mobile form. Trees, especially conifers, all along the coast of California, are watered by fog that is contaminated with dissolved aluminum and other toxins. The fog water condenses on the needles, where the toxins become concentrated by partial evaporation. Eventually, the toxin-bearing fog water drips to the ground and slowly poisons the trees, weakening their defenses to bark beetles and other pathogens. You can go walk around here right now and look up at the redwoods and see a lot of dead leaves on live trees. And it's a direct reason. It's not because the tree's old. It's not because it's fall. They're fucking evergreens, you know? It's because getting poisoned when they are getting foliarly fed. And that's killing them from the top down. And then what you get for the groundwater is just the collected sludge of however many days, months, years of spraying heavy metals into the environment. When this comes into contact with fire, it acts as an accelerant. I am I don't know. I mean, this is something that we've been saying for quite a while now, and it's something that we've been trying to get across, not as like uh, oh, holy fuck, this is, some sort of massive conspiracy, but this really ought to be addressed as an environmental concern. We, we don't get to talk about wanting to save the planet if we're actively engineering fucking chemically altered solutions to have negative results that essentially, I don't know, drive population, or control population, manipulate the path in which people can move. Like I said, again, I'm sure that there's a lot of monetary reasons for altering the climate, altering the even the very fucking jet streams that we have. They're nefarious and evil and sociopathic. But we've got all of these different parts of the country, of the planet, on fire that typically should not be on fucking fire. Uh, you don't get to have a complete picture of what climate change looks like, of what any periods of global warming from the 1900 on look like until you incorporate geoengineering data. We've got 100 years of data on weather manipulation projects and what they do. We need to demand of climate scientists that they incorporate this into their models. The same way that we need to demand that fracking be incorporated into earthquake prediction models. There's no fundamental difference between the geoengineering that occurs through fracking and the geoengineering that occurs through spraying heavy metals in the air in terms of why they need to be incorporated into measuring this data. You are physically altering the fundamental thing, the fundamental elements in nature. You should be incorporating that into your fucking science, man. Um, I kind of want to connect this in a way to the climate, the big Green New Deal climate plan that Bernie Sanders um, released yesterday. I'm going to go to the chat here for a minute. Um, do do do. Now I have to manipulate rainstorms to regulate the markets. Yeah, it's not gonna just like it's. At what point do we concede that like the entirety of our soil has already been modified to the point to where something like organic doesn't exist? Um, Glyphosate is showing up in the water, it's showing up in the soil, it's showing up in particulate matter. I if the threats and warnings coming out of a scientific community that won't incorporate geoengineering into their data models are saying we have a very limited period of time before irreversible climate collapse, and we are essentially threatened as a species and we've redlined. Um, what can we do to draw attention to this? Because anytime you start saying, look, dude, they're spraying gnarly shit into the air, people look at you like you're crazy. Even though they've all seen it. And even though they've all probably admitted to themselves that that's not just a jet trail, that's probably not good for us. Like how do you address that? Tom Hartman. Uh, Tom Hartman is like he was like your favorite professor or your favorite English teacher or something like that, and then you met him a few years later outside of the classroom setting, and he's a completely disappointing douchebag. That's Tom Hartman all the time. At the end of the day, Tom Hartman is going to toe the party line, if not 100%, 98.5%, and the him is right about supporting. He is Tom Hartman's Padawan, because at the end of the day, Kyle wants you to vote for a Democrat. Oh, Hartman's not even endorsing Bernie this time around. I thought he was kind of like he was like tipped on a show, what, all every week or something like that. Do an hour radio address on the Tom Hartman show. Um, I mean, I don't know. It seems like now would be the safest possible time to endorse Bernie Sanders because he signed a loyalty pledge. He signed a loyalty oath to the party. You wouldn't be able to run or participate in the debates had he not signed a loyalty pledge. So I don't know what the fuck they're afraid of. I really don't. I don't know what they could possibly be afraid of. The entire primary is rigged, fucking front to back. There's no question in my mind that they're going to cheat him again, that it's going to go to a contested convention. I need a new camera. I don't know. It's fucking like why somebody like Tom Hartman wouldn't even be like, it's a fucking now is a really safe time to support the progressive policies that I've been pretending to espouse for the last 30 years. Now that they've become fully mainstream, is Tom Hartman an Elizabeth Warren fan? Is that what it is? I would maybe guess. I don't know. What's up, propaganda? YouTube blocks you from calling me a sexy prick. Aw, I'm sorry. I think if Bernie wanted to, he could probably invite Chomsky along on the campaign trail, and they could sit down and they could do like an hour's worth of bullshitting every day, and it would convince more people to vote for him than any other campaign rally ever would. That Joe Rogan interview is like at 9.5 million views right now. I am totally a prick, Karen. I am totally a prick. I promise you. I don't know. It seems like all the centrists got internal polling numbers, and they saw that Bernie is in fact doing way the shit better than they need him to be, and so they decided to freak out. Like, I don't understand. I really don't understand what they're so afraid of. I really don't. At the end of the day, he can't rule by executive order if he somehow makes it through a rigged primary and a rigged general election. You're not going to have a political revolution by voting for the same party that you voted for the last couple of centuries. You don't achieve revolution by, I don't know, man, fucking voting for a Democrat, even if they're non-establishment. It's a fucking shell game. It really is. You be generous, dude. The things that Bernie Sanders is proposing are like marginally tinkering around the edges of capitalism. They're sort of pulling the United States slowly into the 20th century in terms of where the rest of the world is at. Bernie Sanders would have been a great president in 1992. Bernie Sanders would have been the president that the country needed to go in a more Western European social democracy type way 25 years ago. Um, that obviously hasn't happened. We are right smack dab in the middle of the collapse of the empire. We can't sustain the the levels of fucking wage slavery that we need to keep this empire going without taking over more countries and adding more wage slaves. We can't. That's the only way to continue the empire. And there's going to be some huge pushback in the form of the Chinese government and the Russian government and the Iranian government. Just today, I saw Paul Krugman attacking central banks as an institution in general, which is a little out of the ordinary. That's absolutely true. Mystery Revolution brings you back to the same spot. My buddy Benjamin Balderson likes to say that. You're not going to achieve a new way of living by continuing to vote for people in the Democratic Party. You're just fucking not. You're gonna get window dressing to progress. You're gonna get lip service to climate collapse. You're gonna get really feel good propaganda. You're going to get none of the shit that you need. If Bernie started talking about inverted totalitarianism, they'd never let him on TV again. Straight up. That's not a thing that I see happening. I think it would be great. I also think it would be great if 4 years ago Bernie started talking about MMT in a way that it would have given people a number of years to get to know and to understand a little bit better. But it's not exactly the way that worked out. I keep hearing from the MMT people that Bernie's policy positions in and of themselves explain MMT, and I'm just not there. I'm really not. The mainstream version of climate change is end times propaganda for atheists. That is an accurate statement. Fuck yeah. I couldn't agree with that more, Ruben. We were talking on the Free Assange vigil last night about one of the ways that the Four Corners hit piece against Julian Assange plays out is in this sort of hero-villain narrative. And kind of sparking a different track of conversation about why we need this hero-villain narrative and what it does, and ultimately who it benefits. And I think in terms of the even the left media version of climate change, because to be perfectly honest, man, I don't know where else you're going to go for left or independent media to have a conversation with the content creator about geoengineering's influence in climate change. I don't know. And if you do, please let me know, because I want to have them on my show and I want to talk to them and I want to hash this conversation out in greater detail with them. But yeah, no, you're right. When you hear this is what's going to happen with climate change, this is what this paper says. This paper says we've got till 2030. This thing says this study says we've got till 2050. This politician's talking about, oh, we can do this in 30 years, all that shit. None of it exists other than to stoke fear, because none of the people that are telling you that information are going to do a fucking thing about it. I've looked over I've looked over Bernie Sanders' Green New Deal thing, his big climate plan, the one that is earth-shattering and groundbreaking and even newer and greener than the deal that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jeff Merkley came out with at the beginning of the year, and it's even newer and greener than, you know, everybody else's new green deal. And there's not a word in it about reforestation. Now, I said this yesterday, talking about how the Amazon's burning. If trees are the Earth's lungs, and we don't have lungs anymore, it doesn't matter that we decarbonize by 2050, because we won't have any fucking trees. I think a climate plan that doesn't include mass land buybacks and reforestation is missing the fucking point entirely. Tulsi's Off Fossil Fuels Act is better than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's. It still has a little bit too much corporate-friendly language in it. It's still open to interpretation. For a little bit too much, and it relies too heavily on like petroleum-based products to drive a greener economy. Like it's weird. But the left media version of climate change is the exact same version as the mainstream version. Yeah. So this is one of those things where, like, I don't want to talk shit about the people that I love. I don't want to talk shit about people whose content I enjoy. I don't want to name anybody's name. I really don't. They've been called out throughout left media for different reasons and different things, but you're right. At the end of the day, they're all having the exact same conversation about climate change, and they're not having a conversation. The one thing that they get to point out is that mainstream media doesn't take it one more step and go, it's a direct result of these, 100 corporations that are responsible for, it's what, 75% of all carbon emissions. U.S. military, largest global polluter, in terms of international presence. None of that is ever mentioned in the mainstream media, and those are fair and valid points. But when that's the only point you get to make, you're not looking at the whole picture. And the whole picture incorporates geoengineering. When we can laugh about MSNBC and CBS releasing articles that say, Bill Gates and Microsoft think blocking out the sun might be the key to harmful UV rays or this or that. It's in the public consciousness that it fucking happens. It is, but when it's time to, like, incorporate it into a climate model, nobody wants to touch it, because ultimately, who has to take responsibility for allowing geoengineering to happen? And it's your country's government, or a couple particular CEOs who then worked in tandem with your country's government to do this horrific shit. And you didn't stop it because you thought it was a hoax, because they told you it was a hoax, because even Joe Rogan had doubts about it, like, I don't know what you do to wash several decades worth of barium and aluminum and coal fly ash away from your atmosphere, but I know that if we don't start, we're past untenable. You know what? Propaganda, people don't support Tulsi's off act for the exact same reason that they haven't supported Tulsi since the day she stepped down from vice chair of the DNC. That was the ultimate sin that she committed. She fucking told on mother in front of the whole class, and she walked away to go support Bernie publicly, and got threatening letters from her own colleagues and straight up, we are not going to work with Joe bitch ass ever again, about it in her own party for saying, no, I can't take part in this process. This process is like, at that, her excuse was the debate schedule is rigged, and that was her being really polite by including the words debate schedule in this is rigged. I think she extra miled it in terms of civility on that account. I really do. But it was the ultimate sin, and everything that she's done going forward has been kneecapped brutally by her own party's leadership, by committee heads. She had to fight to get a provision of her Stop Funding Terrorists Act into this year's NDAA. She wrote that 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago. Ride dead in committee for the whole time. So I mean, I understand her lack of support. What I don't understand is why more Republicans who genuinely understand that there has been a human influence in our climate collapse, why they didn't get on board with her. That would be my question. Alex Jones talks about it, therefore I don't believe it. Yeah, and that's why Alex Jones is the perfect fucking controlled opposition. Alex Jones is a fucking actor. He's playing a role. He's doing a very, very good job of it. But his role is to show you direct evidence of the thing that is going on, and then cloud that with they're digging up the frogs and fucking all that shit. That's his gig, fucking blood color covered blood drinking fucking that. It's like that shit's intentional, and that's to discredit anything that he said that was valid. That's why he's there. Love bombing. So look, dude, AOC and the Justice Democrats aren't there to move the Democratic Party in a more left-leaning and socialist direction. They're there to become the heirs apparent to the power that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer wield within the party. And that's power that is hoarded but never spent. It's the dumbest fucking approach that I've ever seen, but what it does is it always increases their personal wealth. It always increases their personal public profile, and they rarely have to use any muscle, and the only time they have to use muscle is when they have to stand up to the people on behalf of their donors. Like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll give you everything you wanted for your fucking border wall with no conditions, or for your border guard with no conditions whatsoever. Sure, why not? Always ask off-topic questions. You do that. off-topic question. Like I pretty much got through the geoengineering thing. Um, what do you mean they did it to Bill Maher? Bill Maher was a smarmy fucking establishment pro-capitalism fucking quasi free love libertarian when he started, man. I've never heard anything out of Bill Maher that was he smoked pot. He was open about smoking pot. He made fun of Jesus. Like he didn't do he's never done anything that was really envelope pushing. He dared criticize the Iraq war in the context of making fun of George Bush to hone his points with the more liberal audience because he realized going into the Bush era that his shtick at politically incorrect was starting to fucking lose ratings, and that if he wanted to stay current and he wanted to grow his audience, he would have to go after the other figure, the person in power, no matter who the person in power was, unless it got to the point to where it did like he's writing $1 million check to Barack Obama, and now you're fully on board for one team. You're specifically exclusively playing for one team, and your ratings hinge on your ability to go to bat for that team. Do I know who Bo of the Fifth Column is? I have heard of this dude. I have heard that he is pretty solid. I have not checked him out. Somebody was talking about he basically lays out anarcho-socialism without ever mentioning that it's anarcho-socialism. So I'm definitely interested in looking at it. Oh, I mean, I totally get what I totally get what you're saying about the love. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm just saying that Bill Maher has always been that schmarmy douchebag. I don't think that I mean, I think he has every right to fucking question whatever the fuck he wants to question outside of the narrative. But he doesn't have any fucking credibility. Like he doesn't get to speak on an issue like to me or for me, even if I agree with him on that issue. Like fuck 100% of Bill Maher. If you want to see Bill Maher being a fucking establishment prick way back when, look up politically incorrect and Boots Riley. Go do that thing at some point. Boom Willow, what's happening? They didn't take his show away. He went to fucking HBO and he's making 18 million times more than he ever would at ABC. Are you kidding me, dude? Colbert doesn't make the kind of money Bill Maher does. And they got Colbert on a fucking tight leash too. I mean, I agree with you that he got fucking shouted down for questioning vaccines. I do, but you know what? He should be able to question that shit. I'm gonna do a whole show about that. There's a guy in the Eyes Open Network who wrote a book called or about transhumanism and autism. And it's fucking fascinating. I hope I answered your question about Bo of the Fifth Column. Okay, so they took his show away till he dropped the military criticism. I mean, he went to a different network and he's used that network to, well, not just to I mean, dude, Bill Maher's he's in on Vice. He's got a couple other different his hands are in a couple other different shows on that network. Like Bill Maher and HBO's relationship has been incredibly beneficial to both of them. I don't see that as a punishment. Um, but he didn't criticize the military as I remember it. He criticized the general. He criticized the war. Like he wasn't being derogatory to soldiers. I don't know. I can't remember. I like, fuck that guy. I'm gonna. It's my fallback spot. Fuck 100% of Bill Maher. Um, so I know that Graham had a lot of shit yanked away. I know that he was on track to be like bigger shit in LA. Um, and he opened his mouth and he got that taken away from him. Um, like I get it, dude. I get all that shit, dude. I've seen it play out in a million different ways and had variations of it happen to me. I'm pretty sure we all have. I think it's to Graham's benefit that he didn't get fast tracked into LA because sooner or later you're gonna have to wind up at one of them Epstein parties. Uh, or at least one of them Weinstein parties. Some Steen. Uh, I don't know who Cara Santa Maria is. I know that Bill Maher used to date Ann Coulter, and that's enough for me. Um, like he's one of those guys that I knew wouldn't get me too'd because he's always been pretty open about like I'll go buy it if I'm not dating anyone. I prefer to pay high dollar for my ass, you know. Um, but man, I found out that Ricky Gervais was on the fucking Lolita Express, and that sadly didn't surprise me at all. um, yeah, uh, Jesus Christ, man. They still haven't rated the Zora Ranch, by the way. I should probably do that in a completely different video. I've gone way the fuck off topic on this. That's that's wild. Well, not real wild, but yeah. Um, I'm half convinced that he. Do you remember Amy Holmes? Does anybody remember Amy Holmes? She used to be on CNN. She was CNN's Black Republican before Candace Owens. Does anybody remember her? Q is a button, man. Q is a button. I think they dated too. Um, I wonder what happened to her. I just wonder if she's still doing stuff. She's fucking conflicted. She was a conflicted soul, and you could tell. Yeah, all right. I think I'm gonna to wrap up for a minute. I've got some other stuff I want to talk about. I gotta go into work and I gotta find out if that's gonna be at 3 or 3:30. So I will probably, if you're around, see you in about 15 or 20 minutes. Until then, I'm Steve Boykinen. This has been Slow News Day. Good luck to us all.